Hollyoaks is set to air devastating scenes for Mercedes next week, in the aftermath of her son Bobby Costello's death. Last month Bobby was tragically killed by Jez Blake after the teenager found out Jez's dark secret ahead of his wedding to John Paul. Serial killer Jez then tried to threaten Bobby into helping plant evidence that would frame Dilly for his recent murders. But Jez's erratic behavior became too much for John Paul, who called off his wedding to Jez at the altar. Mercedes then berated Jez in front of the wedding guest, with the killer vowing to get his revenge on her. After coming home from the wedding, Mercedes had found her fugitive son Bobby hiding under her bed, and eventually he agreed to go turn himself in to police. But before he could speak to the police, Bobby was apprehended by Jez, with the teen becoming his latest victim and his body left on the road. Meanwhile Tony, who had been looking for Bobby, swerved his car to avoid a broken-down taxi, which Jez had previously commandeered, and appeared to hit Bobby, who was already dead. Tony has since believed he is the one to blame for Bobby's death. In scenes set to air next week, Dodger will confirm Bobby's cause of death to a devastated Mercedes, but their conversation will be cut short. At the McQueen's, Bobby's coffin arrives for the vigil, but, overcome with emotion, Mercedes flees, unable to face the reality of her son's death. Speaking about the scenes, a Hollyoaks source told Digital Spy, Mercedes is dealing with every mother's worst nightmare, and she is forced to face the reality of what's happened when her son's cause of death is finally confirmed. There are some emotional times ahead for the McQueens as they organize a vigil ahead of Bobby's funeral. But will Mercedes ever find out what really happened to her little boy? Hollyoaks tragedy. Mercedes faces the unthinkable as Bobby's cause of death is revealed. Hollyoaks is preparing to deliver some of its most heartbreaking scenes yet as the McQueen family reels from the tragic loss of young Bobby Costello. In the wake of a shocking sequence of events that saw Mercedes' son become the final victim of serial killer Jez Blake, emotions are set to run high next week when the grim truth behind Bobby's death is officially confirmed. Fans have already been left reeling after last month's devastating twist, which saw Bobby killed just moments before he could hand himself over to the police. Now, as the McQueens prepare to say their final goodbyes, Hollyoaks promises an emotionally charged storyline that will push Mercedes to her breaking point, and possibly beyond. The build-up to tragedy. Bobby caught in Jez's web. The series of events leading to Bobby's tragic end was already a whirlwind of chaos, secrets, and betrayal. Bobby had recently returned to the village as a fugitive, hiding from the authorities after getting entangled in a dangerous situation. When Mercedes discovered him hiding under her bed following Jez and John Paul's explosive failed wedding, she thought she might finally be able to help her son find redemption. In a brief moment of clarity, Bobby agreed to turn himself in, ready to face the consequences of his actions and try to start fresh. But fate, and Jez Blake, had other plans. Unbeknownst to Mercedes, Jez was on a dark downward spiral. After being exposed at his wedding by John Paul and Mercedes, who called him out in front of the entire wedding party, Jez was consumed by rage and humiliation. His vow to seek revenge would soon become horrifyingly real. Realizing that Bobby had discovered his murderous secret, Jez lured the teen into a final trap. Jez's manipulation and threats left Bobby no room to escape. Before the young man could get anywhere near the police, Jez murdered him, coldly and remorselessly, leaving his body at the side of the road as part of a twisted cover-up. Tony's guilt. A case of mistaken blame. While the truth behind Bobby's murder is chilling, the blame for the tragedy has been mistakenly carried by someone else entirely, Tony Hutchinson. Tony had been desperately trying to find Bobby after hearing about his disappearance. In a cruel twist of fate, he was driving through the village when he swerved to avoid a broken-down taxi, a vehicle Jez had earlier commandeered. In the aftermath, Tony found Bobby's lifeless body and instantly assumed he had hit the boy with his car. Haunted by guilt, Tony has since spiraled into a state of mental torment, believing himself responsible for the death. Despite the growing confusion, Mercedes has remained focused on mourning and demanding justice. But as the truth edges closer, all involved are about to confront the painful reality of what really happened. Next week, the shattering truth comes to light. In upcoming episodes, the heartbreak intensifies when Dodger finally confirms Bobby's cause of death to a grieving Mercedes. The conversation, heavy with emotion, is expected to be a key turning point in the storyline, but even this crucial moment won't come without more emotional fallout. Before Dodger can elaborate, their conversation is cut short, leaving Mercedes once again in limbo, trying to make sense of a senseless tragedy. Back at the McQueens, the gravity of the loss becomes even more unbearable as Bobby's coffin arrives at the family home for a vigil. The arrival brings a wave of overwhelming grief, with Mercedes unable to bear the sight of the coffin, fleeing the house in despair as her family watches on in helpless anguish. Every mother's worst nightmare, Mercedes' grief explodes. A Hollyoaks insider revealed to Digital Spy just how powerful and emotional these scenes will be. Mercedes is dealing with every mother's worst nightmare, the source said. She's forced to face the reality of what's happened when her son's cause of death is finally confirmed. There are some emotional times ahead for the McQueens as they organize a vigil ahead of Bobby's funeral. But will Mercedes ever find out what really happened to her little boy? For Mercedes, the loss of Bobby is more than just a personal tragedy. It's the culmination of years of struggle, sacrifice, and deep maternal love. Her grief threatens to consume her as she spirals into a state of shock, disbelief, and heartbreak. Viewers will see Mercedes go from rage to helplessness, mourning not only the loss of her child but also the chance for reconciliation that was so cruelly ripped away. Her pain will radiate through every scene, anchoring the McQueens in a dark cloud of mourning. A family united in grief, but for how long? While Mercedes is at the heart of the tragedy, Bobby's death affects the entire McQueen clan. As they gather for the vigil and begin making arrangements for the funeral, deep-rooted family tensions and unspoken guilt start to surface. Questions swirl about the true circumstances of Bobby's death, and not everyone believes Tony's version of events. The broken-down taxi, Jez's strange behavior leading up to the wedding, and the absence of key witnesses all point to something far more sinister. It remains to be seen whether the McQueens will pull together in their time of need, or fracture under the weight of unanswered questions. Will the truth about Jez finally emerge? As the show builds toward a potential reveal, Jez Blake's crimes remain shrouded in secrecy. While John Paul knows Jez is dangerous, even he doesn't fully understand the extent of the killer's actions. With Bobby gone, any chance of direct testimony is lost, and Jez continues to lurk beneath the surface, hiding in plain sight. However, Hollyoaks has never been one to leave justice undone for long. Whether it's Tony uncovering new evidence or Mercedes following her instincts, there's a sense that the truth will eventually come to light. When it does, it's likely to unleash a tidal wave of consequences, not just for Jez, but for everyone who unknowingly enabled his lies. A legacy for Bobby. What comes next? For fans of Hollyoaks, Bobby Costello's death is a devastating blow. The young character, who had endured a difficult life filled with trauma, mental health challenges, and complex family ties, was on the verge of taking accountability and starting over. His loss is not just a tragedy for Mercedes, it's a reminder of the harsh realities many Hollyoaks characters face, and how quickly their lives can be torn apart. There's hope, though, that Bobby's death won't be in vain. As the McQueens demand justice, and the community begins to ask questions, the show may yet use this story to deliver a powerful message about truth, grief, and the resilience of a mother's love. Viewers brace for heartbreak. Fans should prepare themselves for some of the most emotional scenes Hollyoaks has aired in recent memory. Mercedes' descent into grief will be a raw and painful journey, carried by Jennifer Metcalf's powerful performance and the cast's full emotional commitment. From the haunting silence of the vigil to the desperate search for closure, the episodes ahead will tug at the heartstrings of viewers who have watched Bobby grow and Mercedes fight endlessly to protect him. But the question remains, can she survive the truth when it finally emerges?